Hi, today we're going to go over some of our science tools. We're going to talk a little bit about our science tools. So one science tool that we're going to talk about is called the triple beam balance. And that looks like this. Big triple beam balance. And if I go like this and I turn it on the side of a triple beam balance, I can see that it's not at zero. In order for it to be at zero, I need to make sure I use these 3 grams, and I need to move them in order to make it at a 0. I need it to go up a little bit. And so I would move them and adjust them to make sure that my triple beam balance is at a 0 before starting. And then from there, once any type of weight that I put on it, and the reason it's probably not a 0 is because of this last gram they have in the back. And this is going to measure grams. So when you're looking at your triple beam balance, it's going to measure grams. It's kind of like a scale. You just want to make sure it zeroes out. Okay, something else that's going to measure grams is going to be our spring scale, and it looks like this is called a spring scale. And a spring scale, it measures grams. If I look at it and I look at the measurements right here, I can see that's all the way to the top. When I pull it, it's going to show force, which is measured in grams. So I have to have something really heavy and drag it and see how much force it takes. That's called a spring scale. We'll be using those also. Another tool that we see that we can use in order to make things look larger is called a microscope. A microscope usually has a lens, and you put something that's very small that you want to see closer up right here underneath. And when I look through this lens, the eye lens part, then I'll be able to see it magnified, which means that it's going to be larger. Okay, so that's a microscope. Something similar to our microscope that we use is called a Hans lens. And this is just when scientists are observing things that are closer. If I want to look at things in more detail, that's called a hand lens. If I can find it. Yep. There we are, hand lens. Okay, we'll be using this a lot also in the lab. And then if I want to measure the time of something, I want to see how fast something is moving, then I can use a stopwatch. And that's going to measure how fast something is moving, or if I need to know how long it takes something to do something, I can use a stopwatch. And I would use this button right here on the top, and it's going to show me the milliseconds and then seconds, and then it goes to minutes. If I want to stop it, I just hit the right button also, and I can clear it out with the left button. So we'll talk more about stopwatches. And that's going to measure the time. Now if we want to measure if something's going to be hot or cold and the temperature of something, we're going to use this. This is called a thermometer. Now our thermometer, when I look at my thermometer, I can look that it has Celsius. You can measure in Celsius or Fahrenheit. Most of the time in America we use Fahrenheit to measure the temperature, but a lot of the experiments we might use Celsius. And that's called a thermometer. And then whatever it's at, wherever that red line stops, is what the temperature is. And it looks like it's above 50. It's in between 50 and 60 degrees. So if you look at it carefully, you're a little bit above 60. You go. And this is counting by 2. So if you look at it carefully, each line is counting by 2s. I know it's a little fuzzy for you. And so you go 2, 4, 6, 8. There you go, 68 degrees in here. Now when I look at it carefully. Now, if you want to measure, sometimes it also might be counting by 5s, but on this one you're counting by 2s. Okay. And also we have measuring cups. This is important in science and in baking and at home. This one is a measuring cup that I can measure in milliliters. I can measure the different cup sizes and the different ounces. Usually, a measuring cup like this, I would generally use liquids because it's going to help me measure a pint, which is in liquids. It measures the ounces and how many cups I need. This is a liquid. Usually I use a liquid for this. Another type of measuring cup that I would use for liquids, and it's not really a measuring cup, it's called a graduate cylinder. And this one's going to help me measure the volume of something. So right here on the side, it's also measured in milliliters. And when I measure it, I can look and it'll tell me how many milliliters the liquid is. So anytime that you have a graduate cylinder, you're going to measure the volume. Volume is generally with liquids. So I could do that right now. I can take a cup. I could take a cup and I can measure my water, and I can check to see on the bottom. Now this one isn't as much milliliters, and if I tilt it, you can't see it as well, but it is about, it's 100 milliliters that I just poured in here. So I have 100 milliliters. It goes to this line at the bottom here. This is a bigger, the graduate cylinder is a little bit bigger. We also have things that are called beakers. And it's a little bit smaller than a graduate cylinder. And of course they come in all different sizes and they're used to measure the same thing, which is volume. If I put it in here, and this is a beaker, if I put that liquid, because it's measuring volume, I'm gonna look and check, yep, I'm at 100 milliliters, the same as the graduate cylinder. And this is a beaker. And that liquid, if you notice, is gonna take the form of that container, which is very cool. All right, we're gonna go ahead and continue. And also something else that would measure, if I need to measure dry materials, I might use tablespoons or teaspoons. And it's gonna look like this. Another tool that's very useful that you can use for baking. But if you look on here, look, it also has the ml for milliliters, 25. And this is for dry materials. So like sand or soil or baking soda, I would use something like this. And at home, of course, I would actually use this for vinegar, or I could also use it for measuring vanilla when I bake. So that's another form that you can use it. You can use it for baking, or it also is helpful in the lab. We also have measuring cups that measure dry materials in cups and ounces. Okay. Another thing that's going to measure something in a lot of our tools, if you notice in the science lab, we're measuring stuff. This is a ruler. Good, I hope you said ruler. If I look at the ruler, it's going to measure in centimeters. And if I flip it over, it's going to measure in inches. Most rulers are only 12 inches, which is a whole foot. Or centimeters, it goes to about a little over 30. Okay, and they have a ruler. We also use large measuring. We might use a meter stick also, which is larger, especially when we measure the distance. So this is going to help me measure length and distance. Something else like this is called a measuring tape, which is like a ruler, but it also will help me measure more flexible materials like fabrics that we can also use to measure distance. Okay, another material that we use is, this isn't going to help us measure anything, but it is going to help us, it helps us attract, and that's called a magnet. So this is going to help me attract the opposite polars, because they have south and north poles on them. It's going to help me attract or repel magnets. So if I look at this one right here, I have a lot of different kinds of magnets. See, if I put it together, it attracts. If I put it on the other side, it repels. So that means it does not want to be it does not want to attract. It does not want to go together. So that's attracting. Okay. Attract and repel that magnets do. This can help you get iron or any type, if you need to pick up any type of metals that has iron in it, this is going to help you do that. So that's also useful for a bunch of different things. Okay. So So these are some tools that we're going to use in the science lab. Another tool that we might use is called the test tube. And this test tube is what they're using a lot right now when they're testing diseases, or if they're drawing blood, you might see something like this. This is called the test tube. We might use it for other things in the lab. We might put like other liquids in it and try to make a solution. So we might try a couple of these too. These are test tubes. Okay, those were for right now some of the things that you're gonna see in the lab. When we come back together, we're gonna try to do a couple more experiments with some of these science tools. Just for a question, what would I use to measure my Play-Doh? If I want to measure mass, what would I use? Did you say, if you said a triple beam balance, you're correct. I'm trying to measure a mass of an item. I'm going to use a triple beam balance. If I wanted to put it on top, I can see how many grams it is measured in. If I wanted to try to pull the iron out of the sand, what tool would I use? Good, I hope you said a magnet. A magnet's going to pull all of those iron out of the tools, out of the sand. It's going to pull that iron out of the sand, if you see that. It's very cool. Right, and if I wanted to measure how long it took me to do something, what would I use? I hope you said a stopwatch. It helps me measure time. All right, today I'm going to go ahead and stop you there before I go over on time. I want you guys to listen to your teacher. If they have an assignment for you to do, go ahead and go back to Schoology and complete your assignment. We will see you guys later. It was nice to see you guys. I will talk to you later. Bye, friends.